At my sister's wedding, she mocked me in her speech. If you ever need someone to babysit your sad life, my sister's available 24/7. No experience needed. Guests bursted out laughing. My chest tightened. Then the groom's sister walked up to the stage with a mic in hand. At my younger sister's wedding, she made a speech that openly mocked me in front of 200+ guests. I sat there smiling stiffly while everyone howled with laughter. I wanted to disappear. I thought that would be the worst moment of my life, until the groom's sister unexpectedly walked up to the mic. She exposed something about my sister that no one in the family knew. The wedding completely fell apart after that, and now, months later, my family is still divided. I'm left wondering if I should just walk away from all of them permanently. It's strange how life can make you the villain or the punchline without you even realizing you were a participant. That's what it felt like the day of Camille's wedding. I never really fit into the family mold the way she did. I was quieter, preferred books over people, animals over drama. Camille, on the other hand, lit up every room she entered. She always had a trail of admirers, friends, boyfriends, even teachers who bent the rules for her just because she smiled the right way. It was never a competition, at least not for me. It just was what it was. When Camille announced her engagement to Dean, it felt like another parade I wasn't invited to march in. They picked the Biltmore estate for the wedding, one of the most expensive, grand venues in Asheville. Custom everything, designer flowers, a 12-piece band, multiple outfit changes. My role was minimal. I was a bridesmaid, technically, but more of a prop. I flew into Asheville on Thursday before the wedding. Checked into a modest motel 15 minutes from the estate because I couldn't afford the hotel rooms Camille booked for the bridal party. Not that anyone offered to cover the cost. The first couple of days were a blur of rehearsals and dinners where I made polite conversation with Camille's friends. They worked in luxury real estate, corporate law, fashion PR, glossy people with glossy smiles. Nobody really knew who I was, and when I said I was a vet tech, their eyes glazed over politely. The morning of the wedding, I helped Camille get ready, holding her train, fetching her lipstick, staying out of professional photographers' way. There was a moment when we were alone in the bridal suite. She looked at herself in the mirror, adjusting her earrings, and then turned toward me. "You know," she said lightly, "it's kind of crazy you're still single. You're not ugly." I laughed a little too loudly. "Thanks?" She smirked. "I'm just saying. Maybe someday someone will see past your whole quiet thing." I smiled, feeling the small, familiar stab in my gut. It was such a Camille thing to say. Wrapped in sugar, tipped with poison. I let it slide. It was her day, after all. The ceremony itself was beautiful. A violin quartet played as Camille floated down the aisle. Dean looked adoring and slightly terrified. Vows were exchanged, rings slipped onto trembling fingers. Applause. Kisses. Tears. I clapped. I cheered. I was genuinely happy for her. I had no idea what was coming. The reception was a dreamscape. White tents draped with fairy lights, tables heaped with flowers and gold cutlery, the Blue Ridge Mountains rising in the distance like a painting. Dinner was loud and a little chaotic. I found myself tucked into a corner table with some distant relatives, chatting about weather and traffic. I didn't mind. It was safe. And then the speeches started. Dean's best man went first, a predictable mix of drunken college stories and heartwarming compliments. Dad stumbled through a short, emotional toast about watching his daughters grow up. I noticed Camille rolling her eyes when he got choked up. Finally, Camille stood. Everyone clapped. The band even played a little riff to announce her. She took the mic like she'd been waiting for it all her life. "Thank you all for coming," she said, radiating charm. "Dean and I feel so blessed to have our favorite people here." She turned slightly, looking right at me. "And of course, my big sister Hannah. The rock of our family." A few polite claps. I smiled tightly. She continued. I mean, if you ever need someone to babysit your sad life, my sister's available 24/7. No experience needed. The tent exploded with laughter. Not awkward laughter, full, roaring, honest laughter. I froze. I could feel my face burning. I forced a smile, my cheeks twitching painfully. I glanced at Mom. She was laughing so hard she had to wipe her eyes. Dad just stared at his drink. I wanted the earth to split open and swallow me. Camille handed the mic back with a huge grin and returned to her seat to a wave of cheers. I sat there, feeling very, very small. And then, something unexpected happened. Dean's sister, Marissa, who had been sitting silently at a table near the stage, stood up. She walked briskly to the DJ table, grabbed a second mic, and turned toward the crowd. The band stopped mid-note. There was a ripple of confusion. Someone half-heartedly clapped, thinking maybe it was planned. Marissa's voice cut through the murmuring crowd, cold and sharp. "Since we're giving character references," she said, her gaze locked on Camille, "I guess it's my turn." You could hear a fork clatter onto a plate. Camille sat bolt upright, confusion and panic flickering across her perfect makeup. Marissa didn't blink. "I've known Dean a lot longer than Camille," she said, her voice calm. "And if you think Dean's life turned around because of her, you're mistaken. Dean worked hard to stay sober. Before Camille ever entered the picture." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. "And for those of you who don't know," Marissa continued, her voice rising slightly, "Camille helped him fall off the wagon. 6 weeks after they met, she had him drinking again." A gasp rippled through the tent. Dean had buried his face in his hands. Marissa wasn't done. "But don't worry," she said with a tight smile. "I'm sure this marriage will work out great. After all, nothing says true love like manipulation, right?" Silence. Dead, heavy, unbearable silence. Then, very deliberately, Marissa placed the microphone back on the table and walked off into the dark. Nobody moved. Camille sat frozen in her chair, her mouth slightly open, her hands trembling on the white linen tablecloth. Dean stood up slowly, without looking at anyone, and followed his sister. The band awkwardly tried to start playing again, but it was like trying to play a lullaby at a funeral. People gathered their things and began slipping out in 2s and 3s. The wedding, which had been planned down to the last monogrammed napkin, was unraveling before my eyes. I stayed seated. I wasn't sure what I should do. Dad shuffled over to me eventually. His face was flushed, his tie loosened. "You should go," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. I walked to the valet stand alone, ignored by everyone, and drove back to my motel in stunned silence. That night, I lay on the stiff motel bed staring at the popcorn ceiling, feeling like I had just survived some kind of battlefield. The morning after the wedding, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Text after text after text. Some were from extended family members I barely spoke to, some from Camille's friends. Most messages were vague: "Hey, crazy night. You okay? What happened between Marissa and Camille? We're all talking about it. Hope you're good." I didn't respond to any of them. What was I supposed to say? That my sister had humiliated me in front of 200 people, and then got publicly humiliated herself 10 minutes later? That all the polished, carefully crafted image she built around herself crumbled like a sandcastle under a rising tide? I packed my bag in silence, left the motel before checkout, and started the drive back to Greenville. The roads twisted through the Blue Ridge foothills, green and endless. It should have been beautiful, but all I felt was heavy. By the time I got home, I had 3 missed calls from Mom and 1 from Dad. Against my better judgment, I listened to Dad's voicemail. "Hey, Hannah. Just give your sister a little grace, okay? She's going through a lot. She didn't mean to hurt you." I laughed out loud, a short, ugly sound. She didn't mean to hurt me? She had planned that speech. I wrote it. Practiced it. Delivered it with the kind of timing you can't fake. And everyone laughed. Even Mom. I put my phone face down on the counter and took my dogs, Baxter and Nellie, for a long walk through the park trails near my neighborhood. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I could breathe. The next few days were a blur of silence from my immediate family and speculation from everyone else. Mutual friends posted carefully neutral photos online, tablescapes, the sunset over the Biltmore, but noticeably avoided mentioning the reception. Then, about a week later, Camille called. I almost didn't answer. But some old reflex, some tired part of me still wanting to be the good sister, made me swipe the screen. Her voice was tight, brittle. You could have defended me, she said without preamble. I blinked, stunned. Defended you? Marissa ambushed me. You just sat there. I closed my eyes. You mocked me in front of everyone, Camille. It was a joke, she snapped. God, you're so sensitive. No wonder people treat you like a doormat. I said nothing. The old Hannah would have apologized. Made excuses for her. Smoothed it over. This time, I just listened. After a few seconds of silence, she said, quieter, you're supposed to have my back. You had mine when? I asked. Another silence. Heavier this time. She hung up without another word. I stared at the empty line for a long time before finally putting the phone down. That was the last time we spoke directly. 2 weeks later, I heard from Dad that Camille and Dean were taking some space. Translation: the marriage was already collapsing. Apparently, after Marissa's explosive at the wedding, Dean's family started digging. They uncovered receipts, texts, and Venmo transactions showing Camille had been spending Dean's money recklessly, spa days, designer handbags, private brunches with her friends that racked up bills in the thousands. All while Dean had been trying, genuinely trying, to rebuild a sober, responsible life. When confronted, Camille blamed everyone but herself. She said Dean was boring now, that she'd deserved to enjoy life after supporting him through so much. Dean moved out of their downtown Asheville condo within a month. The annulment paperwork followed shortly after. The wedding photographer never sent out the full gallery. Rumor had it Camille couldn't bring herself to look at the pictures. Meanwhile, Mom kept calling me with heavy sighs and subtle guilt trips. You need to be there for your sister, she said one evening, when I finally picked up out of sheer exhaustion. She wasn't there for me, I said simply. That's not how family works, Mom said sharply. I almost laughed. If that wasn't how family worked, then what exactly had we been doing my entire life? I told her I needed some space and hung up. I started taking long drives up into the mountains on weekends, losing myself in the winding roads and the endless trees. No phone service. No drama. Just fresh air and silence. It was during one of these drives, somewhere along the Cherokee Foothills Scenic Highway, that I realized something. I didn't owe anyone anything. Not Camille. Not Mom. Not even Dad. I could walk away from the whole tangled mess of our family dynamic, and nobody could stop me. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. When Thanksgiving rolled around, I received an awkward, impersonal group text from Mom about family dinner at the house, usual time. No apology. No mention of what had happened. I stared at it for a long time before finally typing, thanks, but I'm making other plans this year. I could imagine the drama unfolding on their end. The whispered phone calls, the wringing of hands, the clucking tongues. Let them. I spent Thanksgiving hiking through Table Rock State Park with Baxter and Nellie, carrying a thermos of hot cider and a turkey sandwich I'd made that morning. It was perfect. Quiet. Real. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel like the punchline. Christmas came faster than I expected. The stores were already decorated by mid-November, and every TV ad blared images of smiling families gathered around fireplaces, exchanging gifts with misty-eyed hugs. It only made me feel more detached. Mom tried again. This time, it wasn't a group text, it was a personal message. Christmas won't be the same without you. Camille needs her sister. Please don't punish the whole family. Punish the family. I sat there staring at those words. It was stunning, in a way, how easily my parents could frame any boundary I tried to set as cruelty. Meanwhile, Camille could torch the whole landscape, and they would build her a throne out of the ashes. I didn't respond. I left the message on read, turned off my phone, and went back to decorating my tiny living room. Baxter tried to climb into the Christmas tree while Nellie barked at the ornaments. I laughed until I cried, sitting cross-legged on the floor, feeling more at home with two goofy dogs than I ever had at any family gathering. A few days later, Dad called. I let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. His voice was low, almost pleading. Look, kiddo. Your mother's just upset. We all are. Camille's had a rough year. Maybe cut her a little slack, huh? I could hear the clinking of ice in his glass. He was probably calling after a few too many whiskeys, the same way he used to after fights with Mom when I was little. I deleted the voicemail without responding. About a week before Christmas, something unexpected happened. An envelope arrived in my mailbox, heavy, expensive stationery, my name written in Camille's flowy, perfect handwriting. No return address. I hesitated for a full minute before opening it. Inside was a short letter. Hannah, I know you're mad. I don't blame you. I miss you. I miss having a sister. Can't we just start over? Love, Camille. There was no apology. No acknowledgement of what she had actually done. Just a vague tug at the old, frayed bond between us, hoping sentiment would do what accountability wouldn't. I sat at my kitchen table, turning the letter over and over in my hands. Part of me wanted to crumple it up and throw it away without a second thought. Another part of me, the child who had once waited for Camille to pick her for teams, to include her at sleepovers, to just see her, that part of me wanted to forgive. To forget. But I couldn't. Not this time. Not when she had gutted me for sport and then cried victim when it backfired. I tucked the letter back into the envelope and slid it into a drawer. Maybe someday I'd want to read it again. Maybe someday I'd be able to laugh about all of this. But not yet. The week of Christmas, Mom doubled down. I got another text, angrier this time. If you refuse to come to Christmas, don't expect this family to keep waiting for you to grow up. That was when it hit me. They didn't actually want me. They wanted my compliance. They wanted the version of me who smiled politely while being humiliated, who clapped and cheered and swallowed my own hurt so Camille could shine. The real me, the one who set boundaries, who said no, who refused to play the fool anymore, wasn't welcome. And that realization hurt more than anything Camille had ever said. On Christmas Eve, while everyone else I knew was posting pictures of cookie exchanges and matching pajamas, I loaded Baxter and Nellie into the car and drove out to Caesar's Head State Park. The roads were mostly empty, just me and the stars and the cold, clean winter air. I found a quiet overlook, bundled myself in blankets, and watched the night sky stretch endlessly above the mountains. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing anyone's approval. Not Camille's. Not Mom's. Not Dad's. Not anyone's. I was just existing. And somehow, that felt more powerful than all the fake forgiveness in the world. In early January, the fallout continued to ripple outward. Apparently, Dean's family had refused to reimburse Camille's side of the wedding expenses. Vendors were calling for overdue payments. Camille's Instagram, once flooded with carefully curated perfect couple photos, went dark. I didn't feel triumphant. Just tired. At some point, Marissa sent me a message on Facebook, a short, surprisingly kind note. You didn't deserve that. If you ever want to talk, I'm around. I sat there for a long time looking at it. A part of me was tempted to reply, to vent, to find someone who saw what had really happened. But ultimately, I decided not to. I wasn't interested in feeding the drama anymore. I wasn't interested in dissecting Camille's collapse like a rubbernecker passing a car crash. I just wanted to move forward. Quietly. On my own terms. By mid-January, I had almost started to believe the worst was behind me. Maybe, finally, I could rebuild my life without another disaster at my door. But Camille had one last move left in her. One evening, I came home from work and found a large envelope shoved awkwardly into my mailbox. No return address again. The handwriting was unmistakable. Inside were several sheets of paper, legal documents. Camille had listed me as a co-signer for a loan she had taken out for her and Dean's wedding expenses, without my knowledge or permission. Apparently, she had forged my signature months before the wedding, thinking Dean's family money would cover everything eventually, and no one would ever find out. But when Dean backed out of the marriage, and his family refused to pay, the bank had come knocking. And now she was trying to pin it on me. I sat down hard at my kitchen table, my heart pounding. For a long time, I didn't move. I felt betrayed, violated, furious, but strangely, not surprised. This was Camille's way. If charm didn't work, guilt might. If guilt failed, manipulation was next. But this time, she had gone too far. Way too far. The next morning, I called a lawyer. An old friend of mine from high school, Savannah Dorsey, had gone into private practice after a few years at a firm in Charleston. I told her everything, the fake signature, the loan, the whole history of family dynamics. She listened carefully, then said something that stuck with me: "You don't have to keep bleeding for people just because they call themselves your family." Savannah helped me draft a formal statement denying any involvement in the loan. We collected evidence: my physical absence during the supposed signing date, my real signature compared to the forged one, witness statements from coworkers who could place me in Greenville the entire week Camille claimed I signed. It was airtight. Savannah also suggested something else: pursuing legal action for fraud and forgery. At first, the idea made my stomach turn. I didn't want to be that person, dragging family into court. But then I thought about Camille laughing into the microphone. I thought about the years of small cuts, brushed off as jokes, shrugged away because that's just Camille. I thought about her casually ruining my name to save herself without a second thought. And I realized, she had already dragged me into the mud. The only question was whether I would stand up or stay down. So I filed. Quietly. Professionally. No drama. No warning shots fired across social media. I let the paperwork do the talking. Word spread faster than I anticipated. Mom called in a panic 2 days after Camille was officially served. "Hannah, what are you doing? This will ruin her life." I held the phone carefully, breathing steadily. "She tried to ruin mine," I said calmly. "She forged my name. You're blowing this out of proportion." I laughed, a low, humorless sound. "I'm following the law. That's all." Mom sputtered for a few minutes longer, but I didn't engage. I didn't need her approval anymore. A few weeks later, Dad called. He sounded tired. Older than I remembered. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "For not protecting you." I didn't say anything. There wasn't much to say. But for the first time, I believed he meant it. As for Camille, when the reality set in that she was facing actual legal consequences, not just a scolding or a slap on the wrist, she cracked. Through her lawyer, she offered a full settlement. She agreed to pay off the entire loan herself, clear my name from any financial liability, and issue a formal, notarized apology admitting she had forged my signature. In exchange, I would drop the fraud charges. Savannah called me the day the final paperwork came through. She folded, she said simply. "Full settlement. You're free." I sat in my car for a long time after hanging up. Not celebrating. Not crying. Just breathing. Really breathing. For the first time in my life, Camille's choices didn't have the power to wreck mine. I didn't go to the next family event. I didn't answer Camille's half-hearted texts. I didn't engage when mom posted old childhood photos with captions like "Family is everything red heart," thinly veiled jabs aimed at guilt-tripping me back into line. I stayed in my little house in Traveler's Rest, surrounded by my dogs, my books, my quiet hobbies. I kept building a life that was mine. Not one built in the shadows of someone else's spotlight. Last I heard, Camille moved back in with my parents. She was working part-time at a boutique downtown, trying to rebrand herself as some kind of lifestyle influencer online. Occasionally, mutual friends send me screenshots of her posts, motivational quotes about self-love and forgiveness. I don't engage. I don't correct the narrative she's spinning. Let her build whatever version of reality she needs to survive. I'm busy living mine. A life built without her lies, her insults, her hampered. A life built slow and real and solid. And that, in the end, was the best revenge I could have ever asked for.